OpenAI has never made a single dollar of profit. It loses money on almost everything you ask it. It is on track to lose around $14 billion this year, and it plans to burn through more than $600 billion before the decade is out. And yet it is worth nearly $850 billion, one of the most valuable companies on the planet. That is not a glitch, it is the strategy. Because OpenAI is not really selling you a chatbot. It is the beating heart of the strangest money machine ever built, one that runs on losing money on purpose, and one your own savings are very likely already plugged into without you knowing. Let me show you how it works. Start with the numbers, because they do not behave like a normal business. In early 2026, OpenAI was generating around $25 billion a year in revenue. For a company only a few years old, that is staggering. By any ordinary standard, it should be a wild success. Except it is losing money at an almost incomprehensible scale. In a single recent quarter, OpenAI posted an operating loss of nearly $7 billion on under $6 billion in revenue. Read that again. It spent more running the business in 3 months than it brought in. And the losses are not shrinking, they are accelerating. The reason comes down to one brutal truth about this industry. The product is extraordinarily expensive to run. Every answer, every image, every line of code these models generate is produced on enormous banks of specialized chips that cost a fortune to buy and a fortune to power. OpenAI's profit margin on the actual service has been sliding, down to around 33%, well below what it hoped for. So the more people use it, the more money it burns. Most companies dream of going viral. For OpenAI, every new wave of users is also a new wave of losses. So why not just slow down, cut the spending, and let the business catch up to its costs? Because it cannot. OpenAI is locked in an arms race it does not dare lose. Right behind it are Google, Anthropic, and a handful of others, all pouring tens of billions of dollars into building bigger and smarter models. If OpenAI eases off for even a moment, a rival could leap ahead, and in this business, the leader takes the lion's share of the rewards. So it has to keep buying more chips, building more data centers, and training ever larger models, no matter the cost. Its own projections now call for a cumulative cash burn of more than $665 billion by the year 2030. That is not a typo. More than $500 billion going up in smoke before the company expects to generate positive cash flow at all. It is a treadmill running faster and faster, and stepping off is simply not an option. Which raises the obvious question. If this company loses billions every year and plans to lose hundreds of billions more, where on earth is all that money coming from? This is where it gets genuinely strange, and where you start to understand why so many serious people are nervous. The money funding OpenAI's losses is not really coming from customers. It is coming from a tight circle of giant companies that are all quietly financing each other. Follow the loop. Nvidia, the company that makes the chips everyone needs, agreed to invest up to $100 billion into OpenAI. And what does OpenAI do with much of that money? It buys chips from Nvidia. Then there is Oracle, which signed a deal reportedly worth $300 billion to supply OpenAI with computing power, and to deliver it, Oracle has to go out and spend tens of billions buying chips. Again, from Nvidia. Microsoft has committed enormous sums too, and OpenAI has in turn pledged to spend around $250 billion on Microsoft's cloud. There is even a project called Stargate, a planned $500 billion build-out of AI data centers, backed by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. So the money flows in a circle. An investment becomes a chip purchase, becomes revenue, becomes a soaring stock price, which justifies the next, even bigger investment. Every company in the loop looks like it is booming because they are all buying from each other. Critics have a name for this. They call it circular financing, and they warn that it looks a lot less like real, organic demand and a lot more like a closed system quietly inflating itself. Because the core business loses money, OpenAI survives on something else entirely: belief. To keep the machine running, it has to raise breathtaking amounts of capital, and it has. In early 2026, it raised money at a valuation of around $850 billion, with SoftBank and Microsoft leading the way. Think about what that actually means. Investors are handing over fortunes to a company that is guaranteed to lose money for years, betting that someday, somehow, the payoff will be so enormous that today's losses will look like pocket change. It is one of the largest bets in the history of capitalism, and it is built almost entirely on a story about the future, not the numbers of the present. As long as the belief holds, the funding keeps flowing and the machine keeps running. But the danger is obvious. The moment that belief cracks, the whole structure is suddenly exposed. And here is the twist most people have completely forgotten. OpenAI did not begin as a company at all. It was founded in 2015 as a nonprofit, a research lab whose stated mission was to develop artificial intelligence safely for the benefit of all of humanity and explicitly not to make anyone rich. That is how it was presented to the public and to the early supporters who funded it. A decade later, that same nonprofit has been restructured into one of the most valuable commercial enterprises on the planet. After a fierce public fight and a high-profile lawsuit from one of its own co-founders, OpenAI completed a reorganization in late 2025. The nonprofit still technically sits on top, now holding a stake reportedly worth around $130 billion in the for-profit business beneath it. Let that sink in. An organization created as a charity, partly to keep this technology out of the hands of profit-seeking corporations, became, in roughly 10 years, an $800 billion profit-seeking corporation. However you feel about that, it is one of the most remarkable transformations in modern business history. So is OpenAI a visionary company building the future, or the biggest bubble in history? The honest answer is that nobody knows yet, and that uncertainty is exactly the point. The comparison everyone reaches for is the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, when investors poured fortunes into internet companies that had spectacular stories and no profits, until the belief snapped and trillions of dollars in value simply evaporated. The AI boom rhymes with that, but with one difference that should worry you more, not less. This time, the companies at the center are not obscure startups. They are Microsoft, Nvidia, and a handful of the largest corporations on Earth. The very companies that sit at the heart of the stock market. And here's the part that makes this personal. If you have a retirement account, a pension, or an index fund, you almost certainly own a slice of these companies, whether you ever chose to or not. A huge share of recent stock market gains has been driven by this AI spending spree, which means if the money-go-round ever stops spinning, the damage would not stay neatly contained inside Silicon Valley. It would land in the savings of ordinary people who never bought a single share of OpenAI and never realized they were exposed at all. So step back and look at the entire thing at once. A company that loses money on nearly every customer it serves. A product so expensive to run that growth makes the losses worse, not better. A treadmill of spending it cannot step off without losing the race. A circle of giant companies financing each other in a loop that looks suspiciously like it is inflating itself. A valuation built on belief rather than profit, and a non-profit founded to protect humanity that quietly became one of the most valuable corporations ever created. Maybe it all pays off. Maybe OpenAI builds something so powerful that every dollar burned today looks like a bargain, and the believers are proven right. Or maybe it becomes the greatest example yet of a story outrunning the numbers. Either way, understand what you are really watching. This is not just a tech company making a chatbot. It is the largest, strangest financial machine of our era, running at full speed on borrowed billions and pure conviction. And here's the thing you should sit with. This is not unique to OpenAI. It is one move in a playbook almost every company you hand money to is running, manufacturing belief, hiding the real economics, and quietly pulling your money into a bet you never agreed to make. I am breaking down that entire playbook, company by company, so if you want to see the pattern, everywhere it hides, subscribe and stick around. And tell me in the comments, do you think OpenAI is the future or the biggest bubble of our lifetime? Because a lot more than a chatbot is riding on the answer.